You want to own a private island, not just visit one, not just rent a villa for a week on some Caribbean rock, but own the dirt, the water and the very air. You want your name on the deed, a private dock where your yacht can slide into the turquoise water like a greased bullet, and a shoreline that is legally off limits to every human being who doesn't have your permission to stand on it. You want the absolute pinnacle of solitude, a fortress of exclusivity, where the only thing you have to worry about is the vintage of the wine in your cellar. That's the idea. Anyway, here's what's actually going on underneath that idea. The first thing you need to understand is why anyone wants this in the first place. Because on paper, if you look at it as a traditional real estate investment, it makes almost no sense. You are about to enter one of the only industries in the world where you can own a piece of land that produces nothing, provides no services to the public, and actively tries to kill everything you build on it. From a pure ROI standpoint, a commercial warehouse or a luxury condo complex in a high-growth urban corridor will always outperform a tropical island. So why do people still want in? Prestige, mostly. A private island is a physical manifestation of I have won. It is a flying billboard for your net worth. But instead of being visible from the ground, it's visible from the horizon. It's a statement of absolute sovereignty. It says you have the resources to bypass the infrastructure of civilization and create your own. It's also a matter of security and privacy. In a world where everyone is tracked by GPS, facial recognition and social media pings, an island is one of the few places where you can effectively go dark. It's the ultimate escape from the grid. And there's the fact of land banking. Owning a piece of the earth, especially a unique geography, is a hedge against the shrinking of usable land on the mainland. That's the appeal. Now let's talk about what it costs to actually do this. First, you need permission. In most parts of the world, you can't just see a nice rock in the ocean and start building a mansion. You are dealing with maritime law, environmental protections, and federal oversight. You need environmental impact assessments that can take years to clear. You have to prove that your construction won't destroy the local coral reefs, disrupt the nesting grounds of endangered sea turtles, or interfere with local fisheries. In some jurisdictions, you're dealing with sovereign waters and territorial seas, where the rules of the land simply stop at the high water mark and the rules of the ocean take over. You need lawyers who specialize in maritime law, ecologists who can certify your green initiatives, and lobbyists who can navigate the bureaucracy of coastal management boards. The Department of Interior or its local equivalent has to certify that you aren't just a wealthy person with a dream, but a responsible steward of a sensitive ecosystem, and they will want to see a plan that accounts for waste management, sewage treatment, and energy production before you even think about pouring a foundation. When some of these high-profile island acquisitions happen, the cost of permission can easily eclipse the cost of the land itself. You aren't just buying a deed, you are buying a license to exist in a space that the government wants to protect, and that's before you've even spent $1 on a single brick. You also need a life support system, because an island, by definition, is a closed loop. If you don't have a bridge to the mainland, you are essentially operating a tiny high-luxury city-state. This brings us to the first major economic hurdle: water. On the mainland, you turn a handle and the city handles the complexity of dams, treatment plants, and pressurized pipes. On a private island, you have to manufacture your own water. Because you can't rely on a municipal grid, you have to build a desalination plant. You are going to take seawater, which is mostly salt and minerals, and you are going to force it through a process of reverse osmosis. This is a massive industrial undertaking. You need high-pressure pumps, specialized membranes that need to be replaced regularly, and a way to handle the brine, the concentrated salt waste. You can't just dump all that brine back into the ocean right next to your beach, or you'll kill the very reef that makes your island beautiful. You have to manage the output, the pressure, and the chemistry. The cost of water on a private island is staggering because of the energy required to do it. To move water through those membranes requires immense amounts of electricity. You aren't just paying for the water, you're paying for the physics required to strip the salt out of it. And because your power source is limited, your water production is tied directly to your energy production. If your power fails, your water stops. If your water stops, your luxury lifestyle ends within 48 hours. It's a constant, expensive mechanical heartbeat that has to run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And speaking of power, let's talk about the microgrid. You can't just run a line from the mainland because the cost of underwater cabling can run into the tens of millions of dollars per mile. So, you have to be off-grid. That means you are building your own power plant. For a luxury island, that usually means a complex hybrid microgrid. You want solar arrays, which take up valuable real estate and require significant battery storage. Think massive banks of lithium-ion cells that can hold enough juice to keep the lights on, and the AC running during a storm. You might want wind turbines, but those are a maintenance nightmare in a salt-heavy environment. You need redundancy. You need a backup generator that can kick in instantly. This is where the cheap land theory dies. You are essentially building a high-tech utility company on the top of a piece of dirt. The capital expenditure required to create a reliable 24/7 power and water system for a high-end estate is measured in the millions, and the operating costs are constant. You have to maintain the pumps, clean the solar panels, manage the battery degradation, and ensure the generators are always fueled and ready. You are no longer just a homeowner, you are a utility provider. Then there's the last mile problem, the logistics of basic survival. Think about every single thing you consume, every steak you grill, every bottle of wine you open, every piece of furniture you want to place, and every luxury item you buy. It all has to be shipped by boat. This isn't like getting a delivery from Amazon. This is a maritime logistics operation. You have to coordinate with freight companies, manage the offloading at your private dock, and ensure that items are handled correctly to avoid saltwater damage. And then there's the cold chain. If you want fresh produce or premium meats, they have to stay refrigerated from the moment they leave the mainland until they reach your kitchen. That requires specialized refrigerated shipping containers and a consistent power supply at the dock to keep those units running while they wait for offloading. Every time you want to host a dinner party, you are orchestrating a multimodal supply chain. And because you're a private entity, you don't get the economies of scale that a commercial distributor gets. You are paying a premium for every single calorie that crosses the water. But the most insidious economic reality of island ownership is something that many people don't consider until they actually own the property: the saltwater tax. The ocean is an incredibly hostile environment for man-made materials. Salt air is essentially aerosolized corrosion. It eats through aluminum, it pits stainless steel, it degrades the seals on your windows, and it causes concrete to spoil and crumble. On a mainland house, you might paint your exterior every 10 years. On a private island, you might need to do it every 3 years. And even then, the paint is fighting a losing battle against the salt. Everything you build, the docks, the seawalls, the pool, the outdoor kitchens, is under constant siege. The humidity levels in a tropical island environment are often high enough to cause mold and rot in materials that would be perfectly fine in a dry climate. You are in a state of perpetual repair. It's a Sisyphus situation. You build something and the environment immediately begins the process of dismantling it. This means your maintenance budget isn't a line item, it's a primary operating expense. You need a dedicated team of specialists, contractors who understand marine environments, who can fly in or live on site to perform constant, preventative maintenance. If you stop maintaining for even a season, the degradation accelerates exponentially. And then there are the acts of God. Hurricanes and tropical storms are the ultimate economic volatility factor for island ownership. When a major storm hits, it doesn't just damage your property. It can fundamentally alter the geography of your island. It can wash away your beaches, destroy your docks, and put your microgrid into a state of total failure. The cost of hardening your property against these events is massive. You need reinforced structures, storm shutters that can withstand 150 mph winds, and seawalls designed to take a pounding from a rising tide. And let's talk about the insurance. Because of the high risk of hurricane damage and the inherent difficulty of accessing the property for repairs, the premiums for island insurance are astronomical. You aren't just insuring a house, you're insuring a high-value asset in a high-risk zone with limited recovery options. Insurers will want to see every single hardening measure you've taken before they'll even give you a quote. If you don't have the best seawall or the most robust power system, your premiums can be triple what a comparable mainland estate would cost. You are essentially paying a risk premium for the privilege of the view. Now let's look at the human cost. Because an island is only as good as the people who run it. You don't want to be the one fixing the desalination pump at 3 AM or managing the waste disposal schedule. To live the dream of a private island, you need a staff. But a staff on an island is a different beast than a staff on a mainland estate. You have to provide for them. You have to provide housing, transportation to and from the island, and a way for them to maintain a connection to the outside world. You are creating a small isolated community. The cost of these salaries, combined with the island premium you have to pay them to work in a remote location, adds another layer of overhead. You need a property manager, a security team, a maintenance crew, and perhaps a dedicated chef or housekeepers. Because they are on an island, they are often on call. They are the ones who have to manage the logistical nightmare of the daily operations, so that you can enjoy the luxury flex of the result. You are essentially funding a small corporation whose sole purpose is to maintain your solitude. And what about the waste? This is the part that often gets left out of the brochures. Everything you produce, trash, sewage, grey water, has to go somewhere. You can't just throw it in the ocean. You have to have a system to compact, containerize, and ship your waste back to the mainland. This is a recurring cost, a logistical headache that involves coordinating with waste management companies who have to figure out how to pick up containers from a private dock. It's a cycle of consumption and removal that has to be perfectly managed. If your waste management system fails, your island becomes a literal dump very quickly. and the environmental consequences could lead to massive fines or even the revocation of your permissions. If we run the numbers, what is the actual economic story here? It's not a story of real estate appreciation, it's a story of infrastructure and energy management. When you buy a private island, you aren't buying a house, you're buying a life support system. You are buying a desalination plant, a microgrid, a maritime logistics chain, and a constant cycle of environmental repair. The land is the cheapest part of the equation. The real price is the cost of defying geography. It's the cost of creating a bubble of civilization in a space that is naturally hostile to it. It's the cost of the energy required to make water, the cost of the fuel required to bring in food, and the cost of the labor required to keep the salt from reclaiming everything you've built. The very fact that an island is private is what makes it so expensive. The moment you connect it to the mainland's grid, its water lines, and its waste systems, it ceases to be a private island and becomes a suburb. The flex is the independence, and independence in the modern world is one of the most expensive commodities you can buy. You have to think about the two scenarios here, just like with the airline. The optimistic case, you are the ultimate winner. This is the dream version, the one sold in the glossy brochures and the high-end real estate magazines, where the island is a seamless extension of your will. In this world, you have achieved a state of engineering perfection that borders on the miraculous. You have a perfectly balanced microgrid that runs on 100% renewable energy, a system so sophisticated that it feels almost invisible. It's not just some panels on a roof, it's a decentralized network of high-efficiency solar arrays, perhaps integrated into the very skin of your buildings, coupled with advanced lithium-sulfur battery storage systems that can buffer the island's needs through the peak hours of the day and the darkest hours of the night. This is a system that doesn't just work, it breathes with the island, capturing every available photon and managing the load with an algorithmic precision that ensures your air conditioning never flickers, your security systems never blink, and your lights stay on even during the most punishing tropical squalls. Then there is the water. In this optimistic reality, your desalination plant isn't just a machine, it's a masterpiece of fluid dynamics and chemical engineering. You are utilizing multi-stage reverse osmosis, perhaps employing graphene-based membranes that allow for higher throughput with lower energy consumption. You have a smart monitoring system that tracks every gallon, from the intake of the sea to the tap in your kitchen, ensuring that the brine, the concentrated salt waste byproduct of the process, is dispersed in a way that doesn't disturb the local marine life or damage the very coral reefs you pay to preserve. It's a closed-loop system of pure efficiency. And the logistics. In this world, the gap between the mainland and your private shore has been effectively bridged by a streamlined, high-tech supply chain. You have a dedicated courier service, perhaps utilizing autonomous drones for small parcels, and a scheduled high-speed maritime transport for your bulk needs. Getting a prime cut of Wagyu beef, a rare vintage of wine, or even just a specific brand of coffee to your island becomes as frictionless as a click of a button. Your property itself is hardened, not just structurally, but chemically. You've invested in aerospace-grade coatings and specialized marine-grade alloys that resist the corrosive power of the ocean, ensuring that the beauty of your home remains untarnished by the elements. Your maintenance team doesn't just react to problems, they are proactive, utilizing a suite of IoT sensors that monitor vibration, temperature, and moisture in every critical system, allowing them to perform surgical repairs before a single crack appears or a single pump fails. In this world, the island is a high-tech sanctuary, a triumph of human will over the limitations of nature where you can truly finally escape the world. But then, you have to look at the realistic case. This is the version of the story that keeps the actual owners awake at night. The version that shows up in the frantic phone calls to the maintenance crew and the mounting invoices from the maritime logistics firms. This is the reality of a constant, grinding war of attrition against the most persistent forces of the natural world. In this reality, the environment isn't a backdrop, it's an active antagonist. A storm hits, not a cinematic, beautiful storm, but a brutal, punishing event that shakes the foundations of your house. When the winds die down, you find that the desalination membranes have been cracked by a pressure spike, leaving you with a dwindling supply of potable water and a looming crisis of hydration. You aren't looking at a maintenance task. You're looking at a week of logistical headaches to source specific high-pressure parts from a manufacturer halfway across the world. The salt air, that invisible ghost of the ocean, has already done its work. It has pitted the chrome on your outdoor kitchen, leaving it dull and rough to the touch. You realize that the hardened coating you paid a premium for is already being eaten away. And the cost to strip, prime, and recoat the entire structure is significantly higher than the initial estimate. You're constantly fighting the salt tax, the relentless chemical degradation of every piece of metal, every seal on your windows, and every joint in your seawall. It's a cycle of decay that requires constant, expensive intervention. And then there's the logistics gap. You have a dinner planned, a special occasion, but the boat delivery is delayed for 3 days because of a bureaucratic snag at a mainland port or mechanical failure on a barge. Suddenly, the isolation feels less like a luxury and more like a cage. You're out of your favorite coffee, your fresh produce is wilting, and you're forced to confront the fact that your private paradise is entirely dependent on a fragile, invisible thread of connectivity that can be snapped by a single human error or a minor weather event. You begin to realize that you are spending more of your mental energy worrying about the power levels, the brine output, and the integrity of the seawall than you are actually enjoying the sunset. The luxury is being eclipsed by the operation. You start to feel like the chief operating officer of your own backyard rather than its owner. If you can even call the subjective value of your lifestyle a profit, trust dirt is being systematically eroded by the relentless, stacking pile of costs that exist regardless of whether you are on the island or not. These are the hidden costs of existence, like the insurance premiums that spike after every storm, the specialized labor that must be flown in at a premium, and the perpetual cycle of repair and replacement that never ends. The difference between these two scenarios isn't a rounding error in a spreadsheet. It's a fundamental divergence in the quality of human experience. It is the difference between a successful autonomous life support system and a money pit that eventually becomes a psychological and financial burden. The entire industry of private islands sits on that knife's edge permanently. Because the base business, the simple act of living on a piece of land, was never designed to be sustainable in isolation. You are creating a miracle of logistics every single day, a constant defiance of the natural order that requires a level of oversight that would make most people's heads spin. It is a logistical miracle that requires a constant infusion of capital and a constant stream of high-level expertise just to maintain the status quo of doing nothing. So, if you still want to own a private island, understand the true nature of what you're buying. You're not buying a vacation home. You're buying a capital-intensive, energy-hungry, brutally demanding operation that just happens to have a beach. The island is almost a byproduct of the infrastructure you have to build to make it livable. The real asset isn't the sand, the palm trees, or the turquoise water. Those are just the scenery. The real asset is the ability to own the means of your own survival in a place where nature is actively trying to take it back. It's the power plants, the desalination membranes, the hardened docks, and the complex maritime supply chains. The real value was never in the land. It was in the technology and the logistics required to make that land habitable. You are buying the power to say no to the rest of the world, and the price of that no is a never-ending cycle of maintenance, desalination, and logistics.